So have any of you guys been following the dub for Yuri on Ice?
I haven't even started watching sub Yuri on Ice yet.
Oh.
I'm kind of waiting for it all to be over, and then I'm going to marathon it.
It looks like you will be rewarded.
Yeah.
It's been pretty great so far.
Well, considering my Twitter feed, I basically have been spoiled on a lot of the major plot points already, so I'll probably be able to consider the plot, knowing all the major events
People
in advance.
have been just awful with that. Like, I mean, even more so than usual with
terrible.
anime.
With who I follow, there was no way I wasn't going to be spoiled about the ending credit sequence of the last episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I follow many happy fangirls.
Anyway, I haven't been watching the dub, but I was, apparently, JJ's voice has premiered, and for some reason they've given him like a Bob and Doug McKenzie kind of impression, rather than anything that sounds even remotely French-Canadian, which, quite accurately reflects the amount of, market research that Funimation does into Canada, which is none. So.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, welcome to Zannen, Canada. I'm your host, Jesse Betteridge. This is our second holiday special, where we take a look back on some of the most notable developments from the past year, and also talk about, our favorite TV shows, movies, books, music, or any other notable media that's come out that we feel is worth highlighting. So like last time, I brought on three regulars, who have made many contributions to this show over the past couple of years. We have Eryn Dearden.
Hello.
Ian Whitcomb.
Hello.
And Randy Forbister.
Hello.
So like last time, we're gonna just run through a few highlights of the last year, and then I've asked everyone to come up with three pieces of media. It doesn't have to be anime, just anything that they feel is either overlooked or worthy of exceptional attention. So last year, when looking back, I noted that we went all last year without getting access to Sailor Moon streaming, and obviously one of the biggest things that's developed this past year is that has finally changed.
Yeah.
The Hulu gravy train finally came to an end. The almost tyrannical hostage holding of a lot of key anime properties that were streaming on there exclusively. The biggest one, of course, was Sailor Moon. Obviously, there's still a lot of stuff missing right now, notably Inuyasha, the final act, and Ranma 1/2. But it looks like it's only a matter of time before they start adding that stuff because on Tubi TV, which is the new format they've chosen, because they've been gradually adding things over the past couple of months. Viz also seems to be one of the only companies that is still putting stuff up on Netflix as well. I just was reading that apparently Attack on Titan is finally being pulled. I think at the end of this month.
Wow, that's the end of an era there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that was obviously the best exposure that show is getting in Canada because it hasn't broadcast here, of course.
Mm.
Or the U.S., because the Adult Swim airing was kind of perfunctory compared to all the other Adult Swim airings.
Depends how you look
Sure.
at it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they're kind of reaching two different audiences, and
Yeah.
I mean, I know the popular conception is that streaming is the new broadcast, but I mean, when you have something on broadcasting on television, it gives the show a level of exposure that it otherwise wouldn't get.
Yeah, people like to say that TV is dead, but really, it does still reach a lot of people. And the internet does as well, obviously, but you really can't discount just how TV has had in North America especially, and how much of a hold it does still have.
So that it didn't get a second airing. Like, it went through one full airing and then it was cut off around the time Cowboy Bebop left the airwaves.
Mm.
That's true, yeah. But with the way Toonami functions now, it almost doesn't even need a second airing. In fact, I kind of question how substantial it is to have a second airing now when things are running once a week as opposed to on weekdays they used to. It's quite a different thing when you have something showcased being run into the ground 5 days a week. But it's important exposure nonetheless. That said, I know we've been obviously focusing a lot on TV stuff on the show this past year, and a lot of that stuff hasn't really gone anywhere. Pick and Pay actually just launched December 1st. I know that we've talked about that on the show quite a bit, and a lot of the media is making it out to be this huge disaster, which I don't really agree with. It might be on a couple providers, but I think when you actually break down what Pick and Pay is supposed to be and what it's supposed to offer, it's pretty much delivering what it was supposed to, and if you know what to look for, you can you can put together a cable package at a good price.
It's telling, because I don't have TV at the moment. I haven't had TV for a while, but there was a period where I was considering it just because the packages did look enticing and maybe I could actually use this, but lack of money was really the only reason I didn't.
Yeah. Exactly.
So if I did have money, I probably would have gotten one.
Yeah, I mean, you can put together a decent package for $50 a lot of the time, but I mean, $50 a month is still a lot. When it comes down to it, what a lot of people are overlooking, and I know Shaw offers this, I'm not sure about other providers, is that they do give you the option to assemble your own package. You can pick any 10 channels you want for $20, and that is actually quite a good deal. I find that that's actually very flexible. But again, it's still getting people to spend money. The bigger problem is that this hasn't created the incentive for many networks to improve their in quality as I hoped it would, especially Adult Swim and Teletoon at Night, which remain completely unnotable and useless, especially Adult Swim, which has been cut down to basically nothing. And I mean, even Cartoon Network during the day is no longer simulcasting premieres for stuff like Steven Universe and Adventure Time, which, if you ask me, that basically makes these services completely pointless. I don't see the point of having this stuff broadcast or subscribing to the broadcast if you're not getting the content when it first drops internationally.
That's why people pirate in the first place, is because they're not getting it immediately.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. In terms of anime, there's been nothing on TV apart from the Iron Man anime, which I believe is still running on Family Charged. Well, that was yeah. It's just that they've just been running it on loop, uncut since I think May. Their PR people did say that there was going to be similar programming coming, and I know that Miraculous Ladybug did wind up airing on regular Family Channel, but Charge just seems to be again, like other services, in total stasis, and that was just a weird anomaly more than anything. And Cheese Sweet Home did air in French on Radio Canada, but I actually have just discovered that it's been taken off the schedule. Hopefully it comes back, because that was pretty cool. I
didn't even know that was happening.
Oh yeah, they were running it every weekday morning at 8:50. Apparently they were also airing 2 episodes every Sunday. I didn't know what times they were at, so I wasn't able to record them or catch them, but I did record a number of episodes of that. I would usually use that, and I often use it as a piece to get up earlier in the morning, because I normally don't get up that early a lot of the time. But yeah, that was
I gotta watch the cat drink the milk and find a toy mouse or something.
Yeah, I mean, I don't speak French, but I still watched it anyway. It took me several episodes just to catch on to the fact that they're not supposed to have cats in the apartment, which is the central conflict in the whole show. But I still really enjoyed it, and I hope they bring it back. I think they ran through most of the first season. If you follow me on social media, I have been rattling on a bit about writing to CBC about airing anime late at night, which is very obviously not very likely to happen, but I would say at this point it's no less likely than any other broadcaster airing anime, so why not shoot for the moon, right? Because it would have the best exposure on there, even if it was at 1 o'clock in the morning, which is pretty much the only place that they'd put something like that.
Plus, maybe you could argue Canadian content, because so much B-level anime is dubbed here.
Is it though?
Yeah, it was.
Go back a few years, maybe.
Yeah. They could run Nana. That'd be great.
Yeah.
We still haven't gotten a confirmation on that Gintama dub either. All we really know is that 50 at least.
Isn't that moving to somewhere else now?
Is it? I hope not.
Or no, I mean I didn't know. Not necessarily about the dub, but I heard something about another studio getting the license, and you said you weren't sure.
Well, that was speculation, because it's just been in stasis for so long. There's a new season of the show coming out in January, and the Funimation and Crunchyroll deal happened after that new Canadian dub was being produced. Given the precedence, especially with that Dragon Ball Kai dub that just got completely put into a vault, never to be seen again. It seems that I just feel that could happen again, even though a fairly large chunk of Gintama has apparently been dubbed in Canada at this point. Maybe I'm just paranoid. I don't know.
Yeah, My instinct is that the Canadian dub will probably continue. I think Funimation will be extremely busy going forward. Just even before the Crunchyroll alliance, they had to boost up productivity for the simuldubs. So any excuse not for Funimation to dub it, they'll probably take.
Yeah, and we also are seeing Bang Zoom doing Mob Psycho 100, which was initially announced as a Funimation project as well. And it's also possible that Bang Zoom is just like lowballing their prices like crazy now that they just have to get whatever jobs they can get. And also, if you haven't heard, Bang Zoom in LA is actually doing a separate dub for Dragon Ball Super that's going to be distributed to international markets.
Because of course there are going to be shenanigans with different dubs of Dragon Ball.
Of course.
It wouldn't be Dragon Ball otherwise.
I think they're just doing it for nostalgia's sake. For nostalgia's sake, if you ask me.
Wow.
The fact that Bang Zoom got that project instead of Ocean, that really says to me that they are probably like doing it for a song. But yeah, what a weird situation that is. For the record, the official dub that is being distributed to Canada is going to be the Funimation dub that's being produced in Texas. That's obviously going to be streamed. Whether it's broadcast is kind of up in the air. They've confirmed the Toonami airing of that. It's going to start in January. What's interesting about the airing of Dragon Ball Super, I'm not sure if you guys have heard, it's going to be running at 8 p.m. and 11:30 p.m. on Saturdays on Adult Swim. But the premieres will actually be at 8 p.m., which is different than how they've done that kind of thing before. I suspect the reason for that is because it is going to be marketed sort of as a kid's property, despite the fact that it's on Adult Swim, because apparently there's a toy line coming out next year. Yeah. Which I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is the first time that Adult Swim has run a show with a children's toy line attached to it.
And the show is pretty funny and lighthearted in the first place.
Yeah.
Especially, I just caught the second latest episode, which has Arale from Dr. Slump in it, and that episode's just a pure gag episode, and it's just balls off the wall funny, and not really what I would qualify as an Adult Swim show, more than just like a kid's show. And so I'm not too surprised that they're putting it at that time too.
I haven't caught much of Super, but it really seems kind of toned down compared to like earlier Dragon Ball shows too. I believe there's not even really any blood in the battle sequence to begin with now.
Yeah, and that's something that was toned down even in Dragon Ball Z Kai, and some of the nudity was taken out of that as well, just because of the modern Japanese sensibilities and the modern Japanese censorship that's kind of happening there. They took a lot of that stuff out too.
To me, it seems likely that because there's a toy line attached to it, Dragon Ball Super might. I could see that showing up like in the afternoon slot on Teletoon or something possibly, and it probably wouldn't lead to any other anime showing up on Teletoon either, but like just that show because it has the toy line. Because I think that just about every anime that has ever had a toy line in North America has aired in Canada, with I think pretty much the sole exception being G Gundam. But I guess such is the politics of stations like YTV and Teletoon.
Did Fullmetal Alchemist have toys per se? I'm not familiar with a lot of the merchandising there.
No, it would have been just like Hot Topic merchandise and stuff for Fullmetal Alchemist.
Yeah, maybe the occasional like collector's figure.
Okay.
Or like statues, I think, as well.
Yeah, Naruto had a toy line though. Over the past year, there's also been some interesting things going on theatrically with anime. I think Randy had a couple thoughts on that.
It did. Anime this year was definitely lower than last year. Last year there was a ton. And this year there was only big time theatrical. I can only think of 4 that really came out. Love Live came out in February.
Yeah.
And that was months later than the American airing. And
yeah,
so
because we talked about that last year.
Yeah, we did. And just like seeing the crowds for it, where just like there was like almost no crowds because they just completely missed the ball on that one.
Yeah, because a lot of the fans had like already either imported or downloaded the Blu-ray at that point.
Mm-hmm. There was also the Psycho-Pass movie that came out too, and that was a really fun action type movie. And it was nice to see the franchise back on track after the atrocious second season that came out. So it was really nice to see that. And then we didn't get anything from about March until September when we got the Digimon revival finally, and that was really good to see because that was the one that has a dub with a new cast, and seeing the audiences for that was really good. The audience for my screening was really enthusiastic, which was really cool to see. And then the last one, the one that was probably the biggest and the one that got the most people in the screenings was Shin Godzilla, one that was directed by Hideaki Anno and the director of the Attack on Titan live action movies. I'm blanking on his name right now.
That was Shinji Higuchi.
Shinji Higuchi. That's why I was thinking. I didn't want to say it without knowing for sure.
He also directed all the shitty episodes of Nadia.
Oh yeah.
Oh, fun.
So that was of all the movies, that was probably the one I enjoyed the most. Shin Godzilla. It was unlike anything I saw, while still being incredibly like things I've seen from Anno. They take entire tracks from Evangelion, and put into Shin Godzilla, and I thought that was quite funny.
Yeah, when I was watching it, I kept like Decisive Battle. The track kept running through my head, and then it actually played, and I'm just like, whoa, that was amazing. When I describe Shin Godzilla, I like to describe it as a triumph of on-screen text. Everything is identified with Anno's distinctive font on screen. Every bit of technology is described as intricately as possible. If you like Evangelion for like Misato has a crazy plan to stop this angel kind of stuff from the early episodes, like that's basically what Shin Godzilla is. It's pretty great.
It's the most engaging, walking around to business rooms and talking about things you could imagine.
Yeah, I really wasn't anticipating it to be so bureaucratic in its plot.
That was what was so good about it.
That was amazing about it. I really enjoyed that a lot. There were a few other scatterings, none of which really hit my city. Boy and the Beast came out in some cities, but it was really more of a muted affair.
I should point out that Mongrel Media basically never mentioned it on social media or really in any promotional capacity at all. They did a little. I noticed on their.
Yeah, it just showed up on the theater schedule one day.
Yeah, on their Facebook page they did a little rundown recently of all the films that they've released this past year, and they briefly mentioned Boy and the Beast, and I think that's actually the first time they've acknowledged it. It's kind of bad, but I hope it did well for them at least.
And we do get the positive of it's on Netflix and it's easily accessible for Canada. I don't think that's the case in the States. I could be wrong about that, but Canada is easy to get access to that, and you can watch it whenever you want. And I think that's one of the good things about Mongrel Media getting it, is that we have access to it at this point.
Yep, they've got good distribution channels, so that helps a lot.
Again, I took a relatively new anime fan to see Boy and the Beast with me, who's barely seen anything at this point. But after seeing that, she apparently told me later that she's gone out and watched The Girl Who Left Through Time and Summer Wars. So that's definitely getting new people into the fold.
And what did she think of Boy and the Beast after seeing those movies?
She still really likes all of them.
Okay.
Yeah. Boy and the Beast was probably my least favorite Soda movie so far. I did not particularly care for it. I think that the story just dragged a little more than it should have.
Yeah, things don't quite come together, and I don't know what was up with that antagonist kid. Like I don't understand what his problem was. It just didn't click. But it still was a lot of fun still.
Yeah, and I'll admit, I think I heard a lot of the negative impressions before I went to see it, so that probably tempered my expectations a bit. So I went in expecting like, oh, whatever, and I really enjoyed it because it was better than I was expecting it to be.
Thinking about what else came out, I remember Kizumonogatari came out in a few cities.
Very limited run, and
very limited.
Very long after the American release. And the second one has come out in the States, but not here, I believe.
I was hoping that would even be like a Love Live case, where it would come out more places afterwards, but not so much.
I want to give a shout out to Belladonna's Sadness, which I think.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Vancouver. Toronto, maybe.
It was Toronto.
There was a showing here, but I missed it.
The main release was Toronto and Montreal. They added Vancouver at the very last minute, and then I believe it showed up in Edmonton a little later. I don't know if it played anywhere else.
There is a streaming site in Canada where you can watch Belladonna of Sadness, actually.
There is?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's on Shudder of all places. That's like a horror movie streaming service.
Whoa, no way.
yeah, completely. I was stunned when I was browsing through it.
Yeah,
it's like,
it's also, but we don't get Filmstruck in Canada.
Yeah, we don't get Filmstruck, but at least we've got Shudder, and Shudder's got a few things that are worth looking at, including that.
But it was a good movie.
I caught that in theaters. It was really great. I find it weird that they keep billing it as an erotic movie. It seemed more like psychedelic than anything to me.
Well, you do know, Jesse, in the context of the Tezuka trilogy of the 70s, those were billed as erotic films.
True. And I guess when you consider that there was very little precedent for this kind of film, I guess that designation makes a little more sense.
Yeah, in general, the 70s seemed to be an era of experimental erotic cinema, so it makes sense that it would be marketed that way.
There was one montage in the middle of that movie that I was not expecting and was not ready for.
Oh yeah.
I haven't seen it yet. Don't tell me what it is.
Yeah.
Well, it's useless to try and describe it, really. Belladonna of Sadness is a movie that will surprise you, guaranteed.
I'm looking forward to.
Maybe it'll be a nice Christmas movie.
And finally, for theatrical releases in Canada was Miss Hokusai, which ran in a few film festivals from G-Kids, and we actually got the rights through our local Manitoba convention, Icon, which I do work for. We got the rights to screen that at a small little event in a independent theater in our artsy district. We played it and we got a pretty decent crowd. At least we made our money back.
Nice.
And that was a nice showing for that movie. It was nice and pretty intimate and personal, and the movie itself was pretty fun. I convinced Ian to come up to go see it too. So I met Ian for the first time, which was awesome.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. This wasn't a theatrical venue.
No.
So was it Icon Icon volunteers who assembled the
screen? Yeah. It was our guys. We didn't anticipate the setup for the screen taking as long as it did, so the showing ended up starting about half an hour late. But everyone was a good sport about it, and it started eventually.
I caught Miss Hokusai. They did play it at the Rio in Vancouver. I thought it was okay. They advertised it as subtitled, but the print they got was dubbed, which I guess took me aback a little bit. Maybe I'm lacking context. I didn't quite understood why the film focused on that precise time period that it did for those characters. And it seemed more like a series of vignettes than anything. It almost felt like it would have been maybe more interesting as a series of 5-minute shorts that kind of would lead to the climax that it did. But I definitely enjoyed it for the most part. It was a pretty good movie. It's really awesome that you guys were able to take that grassroots initiative to get a screening going over in Winnipeg. I really admire that.
Yeah, well, G-Kids, I've been in contact with her, and their per screening costs are more than I would like to spend. But when I got the okay to actually go through with that, I was really excited to actually do it. So that was nice. I feel similar to you about the movie. I think that it was really gorgeous. But the different segments kind of give it too disjointed a feel. I think it could have been a good just an anime series, even just a short OVA series. The manga it was based on, I looked it up later, and the manga is also just a series of short vignettes too. It's not a pure through line. I just want to add that 2017 looks to be a much better year for theatrical films. Even in January, we already get 2 really big ones. We have One Piece is coming out, and we already have dates for Girls in Panzer der Movie, or der Film. So that should be fun to check out too. I've heard nothing but good things about that movie, so I'm curious to check it out. We also have Sailor Moon is coming up, hopefully, and then Your Name should be making a big theatrical presence. With how it's being received in Japan, I can't see it not getting a big push from Funimation.
I would hope.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing Your Name. I'm sure that one will show up. Sailor Moon, I can't help but be skeptical. Whether or not we'll get that one in Canada.
I'm looking forward to it. I haven't actually watched the Sailor Moon R movie before.
No, I love the R movie.
I do too. And I'm glad they're including the short that played when that movie played in 1992 to add to
nice.
Running time. Yeah. Because it's only 60 minutes, so
Well, might as well then.
Adding that, yeah. And I'm also glad that G-Kids is adding all those Ghibli shorts to their to their movies too. The Princess Mononoke re-release.
Yeah, Princess Mononoke re-release is going to have On Your Mark music video, which has never been released in North America before, which makes it especially tragic that screening is apparently U.S. only and not happening in Canada. I think On Your Mark may actually be Miyazaki's best film work. And I would go. I mean, Princess Mononoke is also one of my top films of his, and I would love to see those. I'd love to see them both, but I would go to the theater just to see On Your Mark on the big screen. I hope it makes its way up here at some point. For anime overall, I think it is worth noting, like, despite all the little criticisms we can throw out, and also, all the general complaining about 2016, which is completely justified, I think it is probably worth noting that 2016 is a year where we have seen more anime be released than any other year prior, and we have been able to access almost all of it in Canada in some form or another. I think now that Amazon Prime has partially launched in Canada, I think you can probably count on one hand the number of anime shows that have come out over the past year that you cannot access in this country. And that's pretty great. Yeah.
They were very fortunate in that respect compared to, like, say, some places in Europe or, like, in other parts of the world, for sure.
Yeah, and most of it can be accessed through one site now on Crunchyroll, with most other stuff on Netflix or Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
It certainly makes it much easier to convince other fans to watch things legally.
So now we'll move on to the next part of the show, where we're going to talk about just some media that we have engaged or discovered in the past year that we want to highlight. Eryn, you've done this before, so would you like to go first?
I probably should have checked with you before doing the show. Does the media have to be from 2016, or can you just have found it in 2016?
No, you can just,
because I forgot.
You can just have found it in 2016. I don't even remember what the rule was last year, so whatever. Don't worry about it.
Neither could I. I made 2 lists just in case. One of the things that would have been on both lists, and that's probably one of my favorite live-action movies of the year, and that would be The Witch. In general, it's not been a strong year for movies, I feel like. Nothing really has stood out so far, and nothing for the upcoming award season really looks like it stands out so far. Obviously, there's been some good stuff, because there's good stuff every year, but it feels like there's been a lot less to get excited about this year compared to previous years. But The Witch was definitely an exception. I went gaga for this movie. I'm already a horror fan, but I've been able to get a lot of non-horror people to watch this movie just because of how artfully done it is, how impressively tight a narrative it is. Lots of very unforgettable imagery in both a horrifying sense and just sort of an awe-inspiring sense. Plus we have a new horror icon in the form of Black Phillip. If anybody's seen the movie, you know who that is. If you have not, Black Phillip is a black goat who appears in the film and makes quite an impression, to say the least. The premise, if you've never seen the movie before, is in a small town in the early days of the United States. There's a particularly puritanical family who's cast out of their village for being perceived as heretical because their religious views are so extreme. So they have to find a place to live out in the woods, set up their own sort of place to live with a farm and everything, and get livestock together and try to make a life for themselves. But there may or may not be a witch living in the woods nearby. And I don't think it's a spoiler to say because it happens in the first 5 minutes, but there is indeed a witch living in the woods who begins to make their lives hell, and the family sort of proceeds to infight amongst themselves and tear each other apart figuratively and literally, and see where that goes. Especially there's a very strong narrative with the daughter of the family, who is obviously going to be targeted as a suspect of being a witch. So there's a lot of interesting commentary I felt on perceptions of femininity and the place of women traditionally, the place of religion in people's lives. The film touches on a lot of things, sort of building oneself up as a messiah figure, what to do when you're trapped in a situation with people you should be close to, but are instead turning into threats to your life, that sort of thing. lots to consider, lots to enjoy, and lots of goats goring people. Oh geez, that was one of my favorite movies of 2016.
I haven't had a chance to see this one yet. I know there's been a lot of mixed reactions.
Yeah, there's definitely some good critiques that people have made against it, and I can understand where they're coming from. There are a lot of interesting arguments from people who argue that it is not a feminist movie and that it tries to have things both ways by trying to have a female empowerment movie, but also sort of exploiting certain feminine stereotypes and witch stereotypes. But I think it's also interesting to read from a feminist lens, and I think you can do that.
And I believe it's on Netflix, too.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mongrel Media again.
Yeah.
Oh,
is it?
Yep.
Right. And another thing I enjoy about it is just the effort put in the period language used in it. Like, when I say it takes place in the early history of North America, they really went all out with period accuracy for costumes and locations, and especially the dialogue, which is as far as I can tell, as accurate as they could make it what the language would have actually sounded like at that time. So the accents are a little bit strange compared to what you might expect from a modern movie, but it works to build the atmosphere and sort of really sell you on the premise, and it's really interesting to experience for that reason alone, even.
Yeah, Eryn, I read that in another podcast too. The movie's well written enough to get into that details. I haven't seen it yet, but that was one thing that stuck out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what's even more impressive is this director's first feature film, and it's infuriating that it's so good. Some people really know what they're doing.
Okay, so what's your next title?
Are we not taking turns? Are we just doing everybody's all at once? Or?
Sorry, yeah, the format was each person would just do all their stuff at once. Or we could take turns. Would people rather take turns? We can do it that way. Sure. Okay. Well, Ian, let's go with you next.
Okay, I'm going to keep this on movies.
Okay.
So I agree with Eryn that this seems like a very weak year when you take into account all the big mainstream Hollywood films. And I liked some of them here and there, but my problem with the Hollywood stuff was that every single movie from Ghostbusters, Civil War, to Pete's Dragon, which I liked, I come out thinking, well, I didn't really learn anything. They're not trying to express anything to the audience. I didn't feel much watching it, and I surely don't think about it when I leave the theater. There is one exception, pretty big, a $300 million a Disney exception. And if you told me a year ago that this movie would be the movie of the year, I would think you were crazy. And that's Zootopia.
Yeah. I wondered if someone was going to bring this up.
I was. This movie, delightful in the sense that it's entertainingly delightful the way, say, the Lego movie was, but it's so meticulously thought out in the sense it understands it's a 2016 film. It understands that the audience who would go see a movie like this would have anxieties in their own, would have social anxieties and racial anxieties, and would be dealing with things like prejudice and bigotry and fear and terror and all that stuff, and it makes something palatable and grounded enough that it never gets preachy, but it does teach us something about who we are. And for any Hollywood film to do that now, I think it's pretty extraordinary.
Especially with an animated film, the issues are universal enough, and they probably would have been relevant no matter when it came out, and it just happened to be a depressingly relevant year for this movie to have come out.
Yeah, and I want to bring two things up. The first thing was that the animated process for Western animated movies is so strange now, especially with Disney. Like, this movie was floundering creatively, but they changed who the protagonist was, and they redid the story, and they came up with something really impressive at the kind of last minute. And I want to bring up a second point, and that's in regards to animation and how animated movies are compared to live action. Does anyone think that a mainstream live action movie that would deal with social issues the way this movie did? Does anyone expect that from a superhero movie or a crime movie or a comedy?
I'd like it. I don't expect it.
Yeah.
Isn't it interesting that it's Disney to make something like this? a Disney animated film and not any other studio or in any other genre for a big budget mainstream film to deal with these issues?
Yeah, I don't know. I think the Disney empire is so sprawling at this point that it feels like a wide range of opinions can come from it, including these kinds of socially progressive views. And even when it's a highly commercial venture, like, say, Rogue One, which is coming out later this week, there's still enough a difference of opinions and perspectives within the company, I feel like, that they're making a wider effort to speak to more people, to include more diverse voices, because you have such a huge diverse cast in the Star Wars franchise now, in Force Awakens and in Rogue One, and you have voices like the of Zootopia who don't feel like they have to step around issues like class and race and whatnot in even their animated films. You get even stuff like Moana, which has come out this year, which is that like the first mainstream Disney movie that didn't star animals, that doesn't have a single white character in it?
Mulan?
Mulan, yeah.
Oh yeah, Mulan, that's true. Okay. But still, the track record has not been great.
Well, then you have to consider Aladdin. Like,
oh yeah,
are these racially sensitive portrayals, or is there white culture kind of being put into that movie in a kind of uncomfortable way?
Yeah, I guess that's kind of why I didn't really think of Aladdin, because that's a very heavily like fantasized of the Middle East, whereas Moana seems to have taken a lot of effort to actually get the culture more true to what it actually is, like by their beliefs and by actual myths and whatnot.
Yeah. Although Moana, it's tricky because character development and comedy, there's still that white culture approach, but at least in this case, there aren't any obnoxious pop culture references, or well, for the most part, or you don't clearly get a white actor from Full House voicing the main characters. So there is that.
Yeah. Weirdly enough, Zootopia did have a bunch of pop culture references, but they were very tastefully done, I felt like. Mostly they were in sort of like the background or like one-off things that you don't really think about. And
to be fair, it takes place in a modern culture. So
yeah.
There's going to be references to their popular culture in a movie that's about a developed culture. So
right.
I was really impressed by that movie. I'm sure I'll see art house and independent movies coming out on Netflix that are better than this, because from what I understand, it's been a pretty good year in that regard. But given how safe and broadly appealing almost all commercial films are nowadays, it was really impressive to see something important put on screen for a movie like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, based on the trailer that came out last year, I never would have expected this to be like one of the best films about terrorism ever made.
Yeah. Sure, you can criticize things about the movie. This doesn't reflect our political situation. What do the predators eat? Is this for or against fascism? But I think the attempt was the most interesting part of it. And I don't necessarily agree with the critics who say, oh, this is not the best movie, it's just the most important animated movie. And I don't agree with that. I think it's really good.
Yeah, that's the impulse to minimize animation as a legitimate art form at work there, I feel like, especially if it's targeted nominally at families.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, Randy, I guess we'll move on to you next.
All right. So as far as film goes, I didn't really have anything that really stuck out to me besides we talked about already. So I'm gonna skip those for now. I'm gonna go right into TV, and I'm kind of cheating with this one because I discovered it when it first started, but I feel like it really hit its stride in 2016. It is a show on the CW, and it's called Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. So this show is actually a musical comedy. It's about a woman who, after meeting up with her camp crush boyfriend, decides to pick up her life and move to his hometown to try to reconnect with him. And what happens is she meets a colorful cast of characters, as you do, as she's trying to hatch these plans to get back into his life, and she finds out that he has a girlfriend already, and it's just like her schemes. What makes this show really interesting is that it never the main character as mentally stable necessarily, but it does so in such a realistic manner that it's almost shocking how good it is. I've seen what's shown in the show to many of my friends who have mental illnesses and are suffering from them. I see common traits, and it's not cartoonish. It's very realistic. The cartoonish things are everything that happens in the show, including the musical numbers, which are actually shown to be basically figments in her head of how she is picturing the world. And it's actually interesting because at times she sings in the real life, and she's pitchy. She's not a great singer, but when in her imaginary life, she's a great singer, and that's how it all works. The music's really fantastic. In some way on old musicals. There are some numbers that are complete homages to common Broadway hits. There's one in the most recent season that was a Marilyn Monroe parody. And the entire show is also like very strongly feminist as well. For instance, in the latest season, a character has an abortion. And it's not treated. The episode doesn't treat it as a big life decision, and how the entire on is she going to do this or not. It's about her choice to do it so she can continue on her career path, and it's not seen as a big moral fairly, and that hasn't been done in a TV show that I'm really aware of. Every TV show has to deal with that. It is always really morally focused on the implications of what that means in the greater societal impact, and the fact that it makes it a very personal story and like what is she going to do is really important and really interesting. The creator, Rachel Bloom, she's also a year older than me, and when I'm watching the show, I can kind of tell that we probably ran in the same kind of social circles in high school. There's references to like the one kid that's super into DDR. Surprisingly, like there's some anime references, like and the humor is really smart. Nothing is really just there for shock value, whatever. It's all really interesting and really smart, and it's definitely bar none my favorite TV show on the air right now. And the fact that it's on the CW and it did not do too well in the ratings, but the CW does really good about renewing lots of their shows. And Rachel Bloom had won, I believe it was the Golden Globe for Best Actress in a TV musical or comedy. And so that kind of inspired them to keep it around for at least one more year. I hope it's really finding its footing. It really deserves it. I think it's on Netflix too. And it's just a really great show.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's not on Netflix Canada, but it is on Netflix US.
Oh, okay.
It's the kind of show that I would a Blu-ray release of, but unfortunately Warner's has only released it on DVD-R.
Mm-hmm.
So
not DVD-R. Yes.
So hopefully it'll get on paying streaming because I really want to see it.
Oh, it's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, I'd only heard of the title actually before you started describing it there. It sounds like something I'd like to check out now.
Mm-hmm. And they address the misogyny of the title in the first season's opening song, which is interesting too.
Cool. Well, I guess I'll move on to my first item. It is a movie, so we're gonna take a little step back here. It's called The Lobster. It's a new film directed by Yorgos Lanthimos. A few years ago, he directed a movie called Dogtooth. This new movie of his is nowhere near as unsettling or cringe-inducing as that movie was, but it's still really notable for presenting a kind of awkwardness and a kind of uncomfortable atmosphere, and that can really leave a similar kind of impact, perhaps, but just in a way that is perhaps a little more accessible than his previous movies. For one thing, it's in English, and it seems to be set in a dystopian Ireland. It doesn't have graphic sexual content like Dogtooth did. So it seems that in making this movie, he took kind of a step back and tried to make it more palatable to international audiences. But in any case, I found it worked really effectively. The premise of the movie is that in this world there is a rule that all single people who are not in a relationship of any kind are given 45 days to find a mate, and if they fail to do this, they are forced to undergo a procedure in which they are transformed into an animal of their choice. The main character of the movie chooses a lobster because it has both a long lifespan and decades of sexual virility. So I guess he figures that if he can't eat and love as a human, he will surely succeed as a lobster. So what happens here is that people are essentially forced to stay in hotels and are under pressure throughout their stay to find someone to form a relationship. And they are, their activities are highly regulated, their interactions are highly scrutinized, and the key thing that they have to do in order to establish an acceptable relationship is that they find someone who has a specific trait that they both have in common, and this trait has to be something that can be easily demonstrated or communicated or explained to people. The way that these specific traits is conveyed always very strange, very arbitrary. It is a pretty clear analogy for not only online dating, but the ongoing questionable, seemingly arbitrary rituals that go behind relationships in general. And I actually saw this with my girlfriend, whom I met on an online dating site, which didn't make it awkward or anything, but it definitely made that theme about modern relationships and the types of obligations and the types of expectations and the difficulty in connecting in normal social settings really undeniably clear. And there's also a segment later in the film where the main character escapes from the hotel and he joins a group of outsiders who are supposedly resisting this process and trying to live on the outside and be supposedly free of these ridiculous, almost kind of fascist rules regulating relationships. But the strange thing is that even in this group, it's almost like the opposite situation. They're not actually free. They're still under an expectation that they will not form an intimate relationship of some kind due to their own kind of strange arbitrary rules that they're expecting their followers to follow. So regardless of what side of the fence they're on, they're still denied genuine intimacy, genuine communication, the ability to just be open with anyone. In all of this guy's movies, he has a way of making the characters talk in a really scripted way. All the dialogue that the characters deliver is delivered in a really very statically, like it's being read off a script. Almost like they're talking past the other person rather than actually communicating with them, which is going to be very weird and off-putting when you watch it. But it really does a great job of conveying that idea of just people being completely fundamentally unable to communicate. I think I can only speak for when it was playing here in Vancouver. Its run kept getting extended over and over again, and I think it's because the theater I saw it at ran the trailer, which is, I don't know if you guys have seen this movie or the trailer for this movie, but the trailer is incredibly enticing. It's almost a little misleading, but it definitely highlights the film's strengths, and it will draw you in for what will definitely be a really kind of unsettling journey through modern relationships. I found it to be it's a film that gives you a lot to digest and think about when you step out of it. And I'm still thinking about it now. It's a weird movie. Did any of you guys catch this one?
It's on the top of my Netflix queue. I really want to see it, especially since I was so disappointed in Colin Farrell's performance in Fantastic. That was embarrassingly bad, and I really want to get that taste out of my mouth.
I have never seen him quite like he is in this movie and anything else. He gave a like I said, very static performance, but one that has a lot of intent behind. John C. Reilly's in it too, doing his more or less his usual thing, but it works really well. His awkwardness really fits in with the theme of this movie.
I feel like I haven't seen him in anything in a little while.
Have you? There was a new season of Steve Brule that came out this year.
I have no idea what that is.
Steve, check it out with Steve Brule. It's his show on Adult Swim. It's a spin-off of Tim and Eric.
Oh, I see. See, I'm not a Tim and Eric person, so maybe that's why.
Well, if you're a fan of him, you should definitely check out.
I guess I'm mainly into him in movies as opposed to other things.
I think he is like he co-created the character. If you're a fan of his stuff, you'll love Check It Out with Brule. It's him at his most painfully awkward and almost off-putting, but not really kind of performance. And he's great in The Lobster. And he does his usual thing.
Yeah, that was what I wasn't sure if I was gonna go see, because like you said, the run seemed to keep getting extended here too. I just kept seeing it on the schedule at the local independent theater here.
I guess it is the same trend, because I know it played at the Rio here, and they kept running that trailer in front of everything, and once you see that trailer, you really want to see this movie. It's so enticing. It is on Netflix now, I believe.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I caught this on a plane. The dialogue so intriguing in the way that they, like, you're right, it is very scripted. It's very almost robotic or just like so matter of fact that it just draws you in despite yourself in my case. And it took some paths that I wasn't necessarily expecting. And it's really all in the performances. I found a lot of in my enjoyment with it, and I was just really blown away by what it was. It was very interesting.
There are a couple of good background animal gags too. Not as many as you might hope for, but there are a couple good ones. But I highly recommend The Lobster. It's also Mongrel Media, so.
Not sponsored.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish.
All right.
If Mongrel Media wants to give me money for promoting all their stuff on my show, I'll take it. All right, so we're back to Eryn now.
Alrighty. Well, I think we've kind of gone with all 2016 stuff so far, so I think I'll continue with my all 2016 list. I guess I'll step back into anime territory for this. Considering who I am and what I'm known for, I think this is probably obligatory. But all the same, it's still one of the things I most enjoyed experiencing this year, and that was Love Live Sunshine. Partly because I don't really watch anime week to week anymore. I've found that I'm more likely to lose myself on a show if I watch it week to week. I'll either forget to watch it one week, and then I'll think, oh, I have to catch up with it again, and then I'll keep putting it off until it's all over, and then I never watch it again out of shame. So I prefer now to watch anime either in chunks or when it's all or almost all out. Like this year, I watched Erased well after it had all come out. That was a great show as well, by the way. Same with Haven't You Heard I'm Sakamoto? And I'm planning to do that with Yuri on Ice, which Twitter is not helping with right now.
Twitter is just brutal with Yuri on Ice.
But yes, so I haven't gotten to Yuri on Ice yet, but I will once it's done. But I did watch Love Live Sunshine week to week because I'm basically the Love Live girl at this point, so I kind of had to. But I was glad to. It was interesting watching that show develop week to week, considering all that it had to live up to as a story, as a franchise, as an experience for the fans. And I think it mostly lived up, just with a few instances of disappointment, but still overall I had a lot of fun with it. I think it did a lot to separate itself from the original Love Live while still calling back to it. Maybe a little bit too much in the early going, but as the series went on, you kind of got the sense that they were going somewhere with it. And by the end, you sort of get the point like, oh, that's what they're going for. They've been making all these references to the original Love Live, and mentioning Muse and idolizing Muse, ironically, this whole time, up to the point of realization where they finally realize who they are as a group, and finally separate themselves and decide we're going to go our own way. We don't have to be exactly like Muse anymore, which is code for fans. Are you okay if we pull back on the Muse merchandise a little bit now? But it was really, really enjoyable. It was very sweet. I especially thought the protagonist, Chika, did a lot to assuage fears that she would just be Honoka 2.0. She ended up being, I feel, a lot more vulnerable than Honoka, a lot more of an introvert trying to be an extrovert. A lot is done to really explore her anxieties about what she's doing and why she's doing it and how she feels about Muse and about Aqua and about this whole thing that they're trying to do, and the struggles when it doesn't go their way. Definitely one of the show where they fail in a major way was really interesting to see, because you never really got that very much with Muse in either the first or second season of the original series. They may have had their problems along the way, but it was always kind of a steady progression up towards what they were trying to do, maybe with some character drama along the way. But Aqua straight up failed to launch in the middle of the series, and they have to deal with what that means, like literally getting zero support for what they're doing and what they're going to do about it. And also how that relates to previous attempts by other characters to do what they were doing that also failed, and that creates interesting character drama and many tears. I know a lot of people in the fandom were very emotional about the journey of the third-year students in the show, especially, who it turns out had created their own idol group beforehand, but that launched, and there was a fallout from that. And of course, you get the sort of tearful dealing with all of that, and it's very emotional. And technically, it's a really handsome series as well. They still have the weird CGI models, but they're a little bit improved compared to the previous series, at least. But there's still a certain stiffness about them that's a little odd, especially considering lots of other modern idol shows, especially the guy idol shows, it seems like what's the other one? Tsukiyuta, I think, was the main example that I saw. They seem to have gotten the CGI idol dance thing down, more or less. Like, the models look smooth, the choreography is slick, the expressions are not a problem, and everything is, like, just the right amount of flash and bloom and everything you'd expect. But Love Live doesn't seem to have this yet, despite being this flagship idol anime title. So I'm hoping future iterations of the franchise continue to improve on that, but at least I'm glad that the models are better than they were in the first series, which is but no complaints about the 2D animation. Love Live has always had really good 2D animation, especially with the facial expressions. Again, like the first series, Love Live Sunshine is really, really impressive with the facial expressions, from little quirks of the mouth and the face to the big over-the-top expressions you'd expect from an anime. Lots of really smooth motion of animation. Maybe not big impressive Sakuga moments, but definitely a lot of effort put into making smooth and comically well-timed moments, and also just movingly dramatic moments as well. Like I was mentioning crying earlier, that comes a lot from a very effective expression of characters pouring their feelings out to each other. The only other thing I can say is there was some issues towards the end where it seemed like they kind of lost focus on what they were trying to do in the last episode. In fact, it kind of felt like, of the 13 episode series, it felt like the series, in fact, I thought episode 12 was the last episode because it felt like such a perfect ending. And then I checked the schedule and was like, oh, episode 13's next week. Okay. And as I should have suspected, they didn't really have much to add beyond the closing of that collective character arc that they'd built to in episode 12. So episode 13 is more or less a recap and one final musical number. So that felt a little disappointing. I was still really happy with the overall package, and I'm really looking forward to a second season. Not sure when that'll come out, but it's pretty much inevitable at this point, considering they're really starting to ramp up the Aqua merchandise and hype machine. The first Aqua concert is coming in, I believe, late February. I know a contingent of the fan community is sending messages to people who have the Love Live license around the world, so Funimation and a few other companies, trying to convince them to hold live viewings of the concert like they do in Korea and Australia and a few other places already. I don't think they'll be necessarily successful at that. I don't know if there's enough fan response to get them to work out the rights to that. But who knows? We did get Aqua to appear at Anime Expo earlier in the year, so who knows? They might be willing to actually make that happen. So I'm looking forward to seeing if anything comes of that.
Yeah, I liked Love Live Sunshine quite a bit too. I did have a lot of concerns that it was going to be too similar to Love Live Classic, I guess you can call it. And there was a few episodes early on where it was too reliant on Muse. And I think they did get past it eventually. This was actually interesting because this year was my first trip to Japan. Every store I went to, every time I saw a Taito game station or a Sega store, it was Love Live in the front everywhere. So I heard every song that was out. Yeah, it was really cool. It was neat to be there at the height of everything that happened. The comedy is always where I think Love Live really nails it. And I know that like Love Live season 1 compared to season 2 had a lot more sitcom-y, character-focused comedy episodes. So I'm kind of just looking forward to the next season for Sunshine to see what's going to happen with that. Because I felt that Love Live Classic really hit its stride in the second season, and that's when like the characters really got cemented. So I think that Sunshine season 2 will have that too. But overall, it was nice to see that they didn't drop the ball on it. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the season 2 character interactions in particular because I think for the first series they kind of went with the two characters, Chica and Rico, as focus characters so that you weren't too overwhelmed by the large size of the cast for a while there. But now that everybody's kind of established and you sort of know who everybody is and everybody is in the group finally, season 2 will probably explore different dynamics between different characters in ways that the first season maybe didn't have the ability to.
Definitely.
Ian, we'll go on to your second item.
Okay, so I'm going to be on TV, and I'm thinking about American scripted television now. I think I'll first start talking. My favorite show this year probably was BoJack Horseman. I could go on and on about that fourth episode of the season, the You'll Call It the Underwater episode, the one with no dialogue, the fish out of water episode. I think I'm going to skip that and focus on another half-hour comedy, a more recent one. And that half-hour comedy is Atlanta. Atlanta is an FX series created by Donald Glover of Community fame and Childish Gambino fame, and I haven't caught much of it. I caught 3 episodes that he directed himself. He's the showrunner of it, and he writes the episodes, and he directs occasionally. And I want to pay particular attention to episode 7 called BAN, or BAN, which stands for Black Access Network. This is a complete parody episode that doesn't really fit into the show's continuity. It's pretty satirical, so I don't even know if it's canon per se. But the basic thing is that it's a faux Charlie Rose style roundtable interview for the whole runtime of the episode. Donald Glover's character doesn't appear, and this is something that the show is quite creative in that he can appear as the main character, he can appear as a side character, he can appear as a peripheral character, or he can appear not at all. And this episode is, one, it's hilarious. 2, the format of it is so funny. It's the actual interview portion of the episode itself is this hilarious about black and transgender intersectionality that I even get into because it's so funny and it's dealing with volatile issues, but I think it comes very close to make sure that the comedy stays on point and isn't insulting. And this episode though are the hilarious fake commercials after every commercial break. And I wish this caught on more as a meme, but I guess it didn't in our circle. But first off, there's these three fake car commercials where the message slogan is like, I don't even remember the car's name, but the slogan is when you want to say nothing at all, as in the car represents nothing, it signifies nothing. doesn't reflect who you are as a person, and the slogan is when you want to say nothing at all, or something like that. There's a hilarious Cheap Jack guru commercial about achieving inner happiness that's so on point. But the most amazing thing of all is this animated commercial, which is a cross between Cocoa Puffs and Trix. And the mascot is this fox who is coded to be African American and who is after the Cocoa Puff cereal. And as these cereal commercials go, you have your three kids, again, who are African American in this case, who find the cereal as treasure. Fox comes out of a sarcophagus and it has a mummy. Fox goes after the kids wanting his cereal, and then a white police officer shows up. It goes dark. It absolutely goes dark. It goes dark in only the way that a white writer, director should not do. I believe that. I believe if you're going to go this dark, it should be by a person of color. It manages still to be hilarious, and that's quite something, I think. Again, I've only seen 3 episodes of it, but the ones I did catch were the ones that Donald Glover directed himself. And aside from his writing and acting and singing and songwriting, you can tell that he's a real talent.
It does seem like this is the year of Donald Glover. Like, he's got so much going for him. It's kind of scarily impressive, and I really feel bad that I haven't gotten into more of his stuff than I did in the past beyond like Community, I guess. But he's just such a huge talent and such an honest genius from the scenes of things that I really just kind of want to dive into everything he's ever made now.
Yeah, absolutely. Bit of a shame I only caught 3 from those 3 episodes. You can really tell that out of all the Louis style shows that's been around since 2010, his is one of the funniest. I'd also put HBO's Insecure in that category as well. That go for strong comedy humor, and it's just unlike anything else on TV.
Is it streaming anywhere, or is it just the FX broadcasts?
I believe it's just the FX broadcasts. I mean, FX shows have usually recently gone to Amazon Prime.
Oh, okay.
And Show Me, but Show Me stopped picking up shows about a few months beforehand. So. Okay,
so maybe this will be worked out sooner than later. I've been meaning to check the show out, so I will do so as soon as I can. Okay, we'll move on to Randy now.
So the next thing I want to talk about is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 4, Diamond is Unbreakable. I've been following the JoJo's franchise since the start of the anime, and this season I had known almost nothing about it beforehand, besides the fact that it was apparently the creator's favorite season that he made. And watching it became abundantly apparent why liked the previous season, Stardust Crusaders, but I did feel that it dragged out a lot as they went on this big epic journey. Part 4, it's a lot more of a personal story, and it's a lot more gag and just eccentric focused. There are stand users who make food that heal you, that make you like a better person. There's stand users that just change your appearance. There's no real focus on how can this stand be effective in a battle, because it's not the pure focus of the show anymore. And that really opens up the show as a whole to explore different ideas, like what does this actually mean? And it lets the creator, Araki, go really just balls out with what he is doing and what kind of powers he can show. The characters are really where this one shines. It's just a bunch of kind of losers just investigating what happens in there. It does eventually get a little darker once they bring in the main villain. Just the fact that it's centered on this small town, really kind of special for a show that had been so globetrotting and epic before. making it smaller really gives you perspective on like just what the show can do. And the openings for the show are just really good. The music's always been a good focus. In this season particularly, the music is amazing. Both of the openings for the show are really good. The third opening, which is the one that's on right now, towards the end of the season, they always do something special with it. And what they do special with this opening is just fantastic, and it kind of blew me away. The ending theme is also Savage Garden's I Want You, which is always really fun to hear. Part 4 is probably the best part. I would say easily the best part. Better than part 2, which I really liked beforehand, because that was just kind of completely off the walls crazy. But this one makes you care about the characters in a way I didn't think was possible. And I really am beginning to see why JoJo's is still such a big thing. And I'm really happy to see it finishing up. And it's going to be finishing up in 2 weeks, which is really cool.
Yeah, I am up to date on part 4, and I am absolutely loving it. It's definitely I think it is the strongest part of JoJo's that has been animated so far, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's like one of the best parts of the series overall. I find the pacing I find the pacing is perfect with Stardust Crusaders, which I did enjoy, but it definitely did feel a little dragged out at times because they felt obligated to give every stand user 2 episodes, especially in the second half. And even like when they got to things like Darby the player, which I understand was massively compressed compared to the comic, but was still felt excessively dragged out. It just the pacing just went a little off sometimes, but they weren't afraid to like cut a little unnecessary dialogue and compress things a little bit just to keep the pacing going very strong. And like the 3 core window that they have for it, and I think it's apparently going to end exactly 39 episodes, is absolutely perfect. The pacing is perfect. The powers are getting really crazy. The villain's final power that gets revealed in the last few episodes is kind of convoluted, and I understand that we're going to start seeing more of that in part 5, and my understanding is that's actually one of the problems with the next chapter of the series. I also heard it takes a bit of a step back and goes more towards the Stardust Crusaders, a bunch of guys going on a journey, except in this case it's Italian fuckboys doing whatever whatever it is. So it's disappointing to hear that part 5 might be a bit of a step back. But I mean the animation studio David Productions that's been handling this has enhanced the source material in a lot of ways, arguably. So I look forward to seeing how they handle the next part as well. But creating all these scenarios for the powers to guide absurd stories in a way that just narrowly avoids being contrived all the time. It just works. It works perfectly well. I'm really impressed with it. Even if things go south with JoJo's animated for whatever reason, at least I'm glad that we have this season.
And the visual style is so unique too. The design of the town is really interesting, and just seeing how David Production has improved leaps and bounds from the first JoJo series to this one. The first JoJo series I found very stiff and stilted, and this one is a lot better, and I think that's a lot to do with the pacing too. The pacing is really, really good in this season. There's never really a dull moment. There's never been an episode where I really wasn't into it. And there were lots in Stardust Crusaders that I was just not into it. I was just getting to it because I wanted to see the end fight and I wanted to see like what was going to happen in the end. But this one, the journey is so much better than the destination, and it's just been a fun ride so far. And I'm sad to see it go.
A big part of why Stardust Crusaders is so popular is the end is so insanely memorable. But I wanted to recommend Diamond is Unbreakable to a lot of people. The problem is that you can't really jump into that one without seeing at least Stardust Crusaders. You need that groundwork. But yeah.
Like I haven't started JoJo's at all, so I'm just kind of like sitting here like, this sounds fun, but I don't know.
I think you could easily jump into part 4. Like some things will be a little unclear, but I think like just from context clues you'll get a handle on it pretty quickly. And part 4 is just so good that can't recommend it enough.
Yeah, it's worth it for sure. Stardust Crusaders is still totally worth watching despite our criticism.
I'll have to see, because I'm really bad for watching longer series at this point. So I don't know.
If you're gonna pick one long-running shonen to get into, I think I would say JoJo's, especially since it's not like dragged out at all. They're going back to this stuff years later, and they're able to compress it. It's weird with JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I don't know why. Randy, I don't know if you know. Was there ever a reason why it wasn't actually adapted into a TV anime back when the manga was being, or when the older parts of the series were being serialized in Shonen Jump? It seems like it's one of the probably the biggest, maybe the biggest long-running action show in Shonen Jump that never got like a long-running TV anime. I always found that kind of strange.
Yeah, I did too. Just because I'd always been hearing about it since like 2002 when Shonen Jump first launched, or here like in North America. But I think it's better that it's taken so long, because just like what happens now and like just how they know how to animate it and they know what makes it work, I think that it's excellent that's now.
Yeah, the hindsight really helps that a lot. All right, so I will move on to my next item. I don't have a lot to say about it. I'll just kind of cover it briefly. I'll contribute the obligatory CanCon. Baroness Von's sketch show, which is a sketch show. It was produced by CBC. It's 6 episodes that aired over the summer. I feel that it is without a doubt the best comedy that CBC has produced since Kids in the Hall, which I know is not the highest praise. But I still find that the show overall is very timely and relevant in the way that you would not normally expect. The episodes typically contain about 15 to 20 different sketches. They each range from about anywhere from 8 seconds to 3 minutes. So it can be very hit and miss. A lot of the topics that the sketches explore are diverse subjects that will largely appeal to Gen Xers. They talk a lot about parenting, body issues for mostly older people, and it gets into various political issues that are definitely skewed a little older than I think we are. It has an all-female cast, and often a lot of the material is explicitly feminist in a way that I think you don't really see in network shows from any country. And it doesn't treat it in like this sort of revolutionary or overall disruptive manner. It's just treated very matter-of-factly when it's brought up. There's one particular sketch which really stands out. I think it's from the final episode where there's a feminist queer group talking, and one of the girls has a partner who's not really an academic, is not really into queer literature or feminism and anything like that. She's just doesn't really view her lifestyle in a politicized way, and she keeps using the wrong terminology and is like having difficulty talking with everyone. And it's kind of funny to watch because it kind of jabs at both sides of that culture, but in a way that's sympathetic and informed, which is really neat. And the way it deals with queerness in general is really interesting. At least one of the main creatives behind the show is gay, and it's an interesting evolution of Kids in the Hall in that sense. Obviously much different because we're talking about a show that's from nearly 20 years later. A lot of the sketches will, rather than take the topic of queerness and make that a central gag in some way, they will try and form the joke around non-queer people trying to awkwardly interact with lesbians or bisexual people, and screwing up or not really knowing what to say, or not necessarily completely inappropriate but really awkward. The focus of the sketches is it's kind of subtly progressive in a way that will kind of take you off guard. It does not do it in a ham-fisted manner. It seems very natural. Like, it's not at all unusual. Like, it treats the subject like it's not something that's unusual to see in a network show, even though it kind of is. It's also a little more ambitious than its budget allows, but it's still its first season, and I think that means that the show shows a lot of promise. It is getting another season in 2017, apparently, which will hopefully have more episodes, and especially if you look at, say, the first season of Kids in the Hall and see how that show grew, I think that's a good indication of what we might see from Baroness Von's sketch show. I know that there's a lot of talk about CBC funding and whether or not they should just focus on news or continue to invest in scripted content, and I can see why people are so critical of CBC investing in scripted content. I think a lot of their stuff is, getting better than it was before. But I think this show in particular is a very good example of why CBC should continue producing scripted content. I know all their stuff is not like this. This particular show, with Baroness Von's sketch show, I was surprised at the promotional push it got. It's been completely overshadowed by Kim's Convenience at this point, which I think is also good, but it's it's a little more predictable in comparison. But yeah, if they can continue making more stuff like this, I think it totally justifies them producing scripted content. Yeah, Baroness Von's sketch show, it is streaming on the CBC website. I don't think there's
good.
I don't think there's any way to watch it outside of Canada, unfortunately. I've been trying to get some foreign friends to watch it, and I haven't been able to really direct them at anything. I guess a VPN will get around that. But it's a good show. It's even gotten a little international press, not that much, but it's great to see it getting attention. So yeah, it's pretty promising. Keep an eye on that.
Yeah, no, that's one I haven't looked into at all. But if it's on the CBC website, then that's probably something I can pretty easily look at a few episodes of at least.
The rap is garbage, but and you're probably going to get a lot of ads beforehand, but it is there, so it's available.
Hopefully, ad block will take care of that.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call the ads invasive, but when they're not taking any consideration for what people's tolerance level for that kind of thing is, I think I can sympathize with using an ad blocker for sure.
Right.
Well, Eryn, we'll move on to your third item.
Alrighty. I've been waffling about which to pick. I guess probably I'll go with the bigger one. It would have been either this or a pair of YouTube videos, which are, so I guess I'll go with the bigger one. And that would be the new Pokemon games, Pokemon Sun and Moon, because I am a longtime Pokemon fan, and obviously any new Pokemon iteration is going to be up my interest alley, per se. Definitely justified itself existing, which was the main thing that I was worrying about after not very long in the previous generation of the games. I felt like we had about a year and a half of Pokemon X and Y being the main Pokemon games out, and those were kind of overshadowed right after that by the release of the remakes, Pokemon Sapphire. And I was never really a fan of the original games those were based on, so I didn't really have a great time during that period. I didn't even really finish the games until towards the end of their life cycle. But this new generation coming out is coming out in time with the 20th anniversary of the franchise, more or less. This whole year has been a really great year for Pokemon. We had the whole Pokemon Go craze earlier in the year, obviously. That didn't last for terribly long, but it lasted longer than I think some people expected it would, and got bigger in general than most people expected. So that was an interesting phenomenon to watch happen. But in general, I'm much more into the mainline Pokemon games than the ancillary stuff. So I was much more interested in the release of Sun and Moon to see if they would justify themselves as a new generation of Pokemon, considering the hardware hasn't been upgraded. They're still on a Nintendo 3DS. And the models look more or less the same as they did in the previous two 3DS games. But they have done just enough, it feels like, to justify themselves existing, as I keep saying. I feel like now seeing them in action, I feel like the change between the previous sort of chibi models they were using in the last game to not necessarily but at least more proportional models. It's a bigger change than I thought it would be, and I think it really suits the franchise, especially now since you don't get so much of that top-down view that has been in the game since their inception. Now you get sort of a more traditional JRPG view, where a lot of it is sort of more at eye level in a third-person perspective. You get a little bit of the top-down perspective in some places. In general, the camera feels a lot more dynamic than it has been in previous installments in the franchise. Particularly for the story, which is the really impressive part of the game, I feel like. I know not everybody has been a huge fan of it because they feel like the story is a little invasive or hand-holdy, especially in the early game, and I'll agree with them about that. But I feel like the new director of the Pokemon games, who started, ironically, with Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, has a much better handle story pacing and especially on visual storytelling than had been present in the series up until this point, and he's used it really effectively, I feel like, to tell not just the story of you, the generic Pokemon protagonist who's going to take your team from the little town where you start off to the big showdown at the end with the biggest, baddest trainers you can imagine. But you also get a lot of interesting characters this time around, not just in the sense that they're like, oh, this is an interesting character design who shows up in this one town and then they're gone, which kind of happened a lot in the previous main games. X and Y, I felt like, was very kind of underdeveloped in a lot of ways, especially in relation of the evil team in that game, and a very underwhelming final champion who felt like she had really nothing to do with the rest of the story as a whole. This game, everything feels very purposeful and everything leads to something, like a good story should. Every character has something that they do, and they've got their own little thing that they're either doing in the background or they're building a parallel arc, particularly the major breakout character of who everybody and their mother loves, and for good reason. She has probably one of the strongest character arcs in any Pokemon game, where she starts at the beginning of the game to where she ends up. It's very satisfying to watch her story especially unfold, and the characters that she has relationships with. Very vibrant side cast. All of the major Waypoint characters that you run into, who are the equivalent of gym leaders, are very decently established, and you feel like you get to know them more than you do gym leaders in most other Pokemon games, especially compared to X and Y previously. System in general is just phenomenally different, and I'm really grateful for that, especially because the new system that they've put in place of the traditional, like, 8 gym leaders and a final boss sort of thing, and a final boss area. It's a similar structure mechanically, in that you still have mini bosses that you face off against, and then bosses along the way, and then you have your, spoilers, Elite Four at the end. But they've arranged it in such a way where the battles themselves are all double battles, and they're programmed with a lot more strategy for the AI than is typical for a lot of the story mode in Pokemon games. Like, there's a few battles that rely more on clever weather effects than I've seen before, clever status effects, abilities that certain Pokemon have, typings that are interesting to deal with. In general, it felt like the difficulty curve, which was much more carefully planned than it has been before. And even with the experience share turned on, it feels like by the time you reach the end of the game, you're not too monstrously over-leveled. They just sort of kept pace with everyone along the way. New Pokemon themselves are interesting. I'm really looking forward to playing around with them in metagame for the next couple of years, to seeing what works. I'm probably going to be building a test theme tonight, actually, to play against somebody. So I'm looking forward to seeing what some of the new Pokemon can do in a competitive sense. It's interesting what they've changed to previously established Pokemon to sort of nerf a bit of the overpoweredness of some of them. So that should create some interesting stuff to deal with as well. And I think it's just in general exciting times to be a Pokemon fan, and I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, I picked up Sun when it came out. This whole summer onwards has been very Pokemon focused for me. I actually went to the Pikachu Festival in Yokohama when I went to Japan. And that was absolutely amazing. There was a show trying to appease King Pikachu and Pokemon dancing around everywhere. So I was already conditioned to get ready to like this. The story focus is so good. I can't believe that Pokemon actually made me care about the story, because it typically never really. Maybe Black and White did.
Yeah, Black and White was definitely the second strongest.
Yeah. But like, there was actually like in the ending, there's a big party scene when like all the characters that you've seen come in and you can identify. Just having this really, really strong support cast and really strong through line of a story really helps everything move along. I never felt like I was floundering or walking without an aim in some ways. And in ways, I can see why that wouldn't be great for some people. Some people like just the open world. But like having a strong through line really helps you play the game. I think that the new forms for the old Pokemon really bring a new light to it too, because these are it kind of hits the nostalgia crowd because these are Pokemon that you had already had experience with, but now they're a new type and there's new strategies to work with. So I haven't used before just because their new designs are cool. I have a Ninetales on my team, which I never have used before, and I'm loving it. Everything in this game really just reinvigorated me in a way I wasn't really anticipating. You can press a button and you can see where what your stats are and what you need to train the right stats. There's easy passive train when your game is off even, which I really like. There's lots of ways to get your team up that you don't necessarily need to be playing it every second day, which is great for me because this is a super busy time of year for me. So being able to have my game off and have stuff happen in the background when I'm doing schoolwork or career stuff is really nice to have too. So having that extra streamlining really helps out too. And just the game itself has been, and I'm really enjoying it.
Okay, Ian, your final item.
My final item, I'm going to go broad and just mention the name Gord Downey, because when you look at the final Tragically Hip concert and The Secret Path, that's a hell of a legacy for one year. What I've also been thinking about is that while I respect a lot of TV and what television's become, I'm finding that I think it's still kind of overrated in the sense that how many things on TV are really substantial or about anything. It's kind of the same as I feel about the movies this year. Now, obviously, TV's a little bit better than that. You have shows like Blackish on ABC or I don't know, Black Mirror, for instance, that really do go there and try to be substantial. But I look at the sheer endurance of an artist, what he has to put up with, and what he was able to accomplish with his concert and with his Secret Path. That was really surprising, and I'm closer to home for sure. I mean, there's obvious reasons for that. I've gone into the reasons why the Secret Path hits me home personally. But it's just an amazing legacy for 1 year, and that is what I'm coming away with at the end of 20.
Yeah, the final Tragically Hip concert was a really amazing moment. I can think of few things that have united people in Canada culturally as extensively as that did that one night back in August. It was a really amazing experience.
Seeing the Twitter reactions from the Americans I follow, TV critics themselves, really put into context for me, because most American pop stars these days are international stars. So you have Beyonce, someone like Beyonce or someone like Justin Bieber's are Canadian, but who basically belong to the world in terms of singles and all that stuff. But we're a country with a small enough population that we can claim the Tragically Hip for ourselves in a way that Americans really can't anymore.
It is kind of unfortunate that the Tragically Hip likely isn't on Hirohiko Araki's radar, because I think that the perfect way to immortalize Gord Downey would be to name a stand after the Tragically Hip. So anyway, Randy, we'll move to your final item.
My final item was going to be Pokemon, but since that was taken care of, I can move on to my backup. I was actually floundering between two, so that actually helped me out. My final item is going to be Yuri on Ice, which is good because it also has one of the few Canadians in an anime.
Sure does.
Yeah. The other one the other like main Canadian that I can think of is actually in another figure skating anime too. But he's not a figure skater.
Well, remember, Amuro Ray was
Amuro
born
is Canadian.
Yeah, he was born in Prince Rupert, British Columbia.
So for Yuri on Ice, I went into it knowing that the director was very strong, and I went into it knowing that the show was probably going to be pretty good. I wasn't anticipating it to be as good as it is. But the from the opening, seeing like the figure skaters go and the weird, almost like a Eurovision type song, as they're doing their skating in the opening. The show is still ongoing. There's still 2 episodes, so it always has the potential to drop the ball, but I'm pretty sure that it's gonna follow through. There is such a good pacing to this story of this professional figure skater who came in last place to build himself up again, of the guy he idolizes. Seeing his path through this, it's just very well. The relationship that blossoms between Yuri and Victor is very natural. They never outright state anything about feelings per se, but you know that they're there. It doesn't feel like it's baiting straight women. It feels like it's an honest queer relationship, which isn't something I've ever really seen done in anime. And that is just something that is special, and I haven't seen that before, and seeing that is really good. The fact that everyone in the series is professional and they're all Olympic level takes a new perspective genre, because usually in sports it's a high school team usually working their way to get to the nationals, but everyone here is a pro. Everyone here knows each other. Everyone here has relationships with each other, and the idea of competing against people who you know and have positive relationships with largely is something that I haven't really seen done before. Usually there's like a really big antagonist, and even the biggest antagonist in the series, who is ironically the Canadian, even he is not shown to be like a driving force for anyone. The struggles are all personal struggles. There are no I need to beat the bad guy to get to the top. Every struggle you see is someone's internal struggle to find a new version of themselves, something that they can show. It's also very topical in the world of figure skating too, as I've learned, because apparently a lot of Twitter has also figure skating experience, which is something I wouldn't expect. But just the idea of the male figure skaters and the aversion to showing femininity or queerness for fear of being as that, because of the stigmas that have been attached to male figure skating, and seeing Yuri put that into his routine and working with his feminine side to show more is very interesting and it's a big statement on the state of figure skating, which you wouldn't quite expect. This whole series has been really good. There's been missteps in the production values, because when you have every figure skating scene hand drawn with a choreographer, that's going to happen. The Blu-rays are going to look great, and most of the faces that happen as they're doing their routines are going to get another polish, which is going to be pretty good.
Yeah,
but overall,
the animation quality does sag quite a bit about episodes 4 through 7. And it's pretty noticeable, especially on the Crunchyroll streams, as we talked about in a previous episode. The latest few episodes have looked really great, and I have pretty high expectations for the last 2 in that regard.
Yeah, so everything has been so well done and well executed and well paced. There's never a dull moment. Everything is working together as a whole to the end of the story. And the way it is all going is just it's phenomenal. And I anticipated liking the show. I didn't anticipate that this was probably going to be my favorite anime of the year. It wasn't something I thought would happen, but it is, and I am completely blown away. And the fact that it's a hit, I see my friends who usually watch one anime or watch the big anime, they're all talking about Yuri on Ice this season, which is great to see. Seeing professional figure skaters everywhere tweeting about the show and watching it is amazing, and it's always just so that it's actually hitting a big market with this show, and it's showing and the fact that some people like this show means that there is a lot of truth to it, which is neat. And I just think that the show as a whole is incredible and deserves to be seen, but I'm pretty sure it's being seen already.
Yeah, no, I can't wait to start it. It's kind of I almost kind of want to start it right after we're done if I didn't have to do something else right after this. But I think I probably will wait until it's all out just so I can binge through the whole thing. And I'm really looking forward to it, even knowing what some of the things that are going to happen are, because I don't know the specifics. I don't know the characters' full deals, and I'm looking. Just as an outsider at the moment, one of the most amusing things is seeing the tweets from figure skaters posting screenshots from the show. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, for me, if we're talking best anime of the year, it's a toss-up between Yuri on Ice and Mob Psycho 100. And it's really going to depend on the last couple episodes. I don't expect that Yuri on Ice will drop the ball in any way. I think probably surprise us pleasantly at the end. But for Mob Psycho, I wasn't completely and utterly sold on it until its final episodes are what completely and utterly sold me on it as one of the best shows. So again, we'll see. But yeah, Yuri on Ice is great. So few shows like it. So for my final item I want to bring attention to, earlier this year, DC Comics got a lot of, I guess, maybe flack for a series of Hannah-Barbera relaunches that they were doing.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, but I gotta say that the Flintstones comic that's written by Mark Russell that they put out is absolutely incredible. A lot of people have a lot of the panels that have been scanned from it have been spreading around social media. Especially around the time issue 4 came out. Actually, it's been running since before summer, but it was when issue 4 came out, the one dealing with marriage, that people started scanning bits of that, and those started spreading around, and then people started to pay attention to the comic a little more. And I have to say, the specific panels that go around that seem to deal with things like gay marriage and Fred Flintstone having an existential crisis about his marriage are certainly great, but they do not do the actual comic justice. I would say that this Flintstones comic might be the finest piece of American satire that is out there right now, and it seems to be getting better by the issue. What I find really, really striking about it, apart from the visual style, which is a total departure from what you'd expect from the Flintstones, despite the fact that it sticks with a ridiculous premise, is that you would expect a modernized version of the Flintstones to shift its humor toward lampooning modern social norms from this century rather than the 1960s, which is when the original series came out. But this comic actually, while it does touch on modern social issues quite a bit, its central focus actually doubles down on painting an absurdist depiction of the 1950s, 1960s post-war suburbia setting. That is essential to what this comic is, and because it's going back and looking at the Flintstones not just as a modern setting being applied to this ambiguous kind of Stone Age culture, it really criticizes that idea of applying specifically the post-war suburbia to this Stone Age civilization and the absurdities that lie with that. And at the same time, it adds modern social issues which connect our modern social issues with a lot of their origins that happened in the birth of suburbia after World War II. You see a lot of these connections emerge in the way that the stories are set up. The adult characters are constantly flashing back to how they had grown up as hunter-gatherers and have only recently adopted this idea of quote-unquote civilization, and are their daily challenges are coming to terms with the weird rules and values and roles that aren't consistent with anything they've known up to that point, but have just been kind of dumped on them by what almost seems like an invisible outside force, which essentially is what the original Flintstones was just this Stone Age civilization that's had a modern sensibilities are thrown on them in a totally arbitrary way. And as the issues unfold, we learn that actually a war had taken place, which was in fact a genocide of tree people who live in the nearby village, and that's the foundation on which Bedrock was created. And overall, it's just the struggle to not only adapt to modern society, but also come to terms with what had happened to create that society. As I mentioned, the comic actually gained a lot of notoriety when issue 4 came out. And in a lot of those scans, we see Fred coping with his own problems with marriage, and two cavemen known as Adam and Steve, who are trying to get married, despite the fact that they're gay, or non-breeders as they call them. And the fact that those characters are named Adam and Steve is just to me infinitely hilarious. Seeing those parts out of context is actually a little misleading, because the story in that issue actually focused on marriage itself as a new and radical concept, which was being popularized within society as a replacement to like polygamous structures in hunter-gatherer society, which I don't know if is actually accurate or not, but I'm fine rolling with it for the sake of what the comic's trying to accomplish. There's one great line where where protesters were telling these radical married couples to go back to your sex cave like nature intended, which I think just subverts that issue in a way I never would have expected. But it's the next issue 5, called Democracy Sucks, which I think is actually, it may be the best piece of U.S. political satire that has come out this year, especially surrounding the recent U.S. election. A large part of that is because it is actually one of the few works that predicted a Trump victory in the election, whereas with a lot of satirists and different scripted shows that were trying to approach the issue basically just assumed that Clinton was going to win the election. The Flintstones comic actually called it, and I know this because the issue was finished and published several days before the election took place, and right at the end, Claude the Destroyer, who, as they say, says the things that the audience wishes was true, managed to beat out the incumbent mayor. And part of what makes that issue really effective is that it parallels the story of the genocide of the tree people with the bully politics that are going on in Bedrock, and it just really demonstrates how this comic is able to sort of contrast that really weird historical amalgamation that the original Flintstones was, and laying that against modern issues that are going on, and like the satirical and political observations of this comic are just insane. And I think a strength that this version plays up is that it just works better as a comic. Like the type of pacing and comic timing that's inherent within the Flintstones just works better as a comic than it did as an animated series, where it just becomes very stale and predictable quickly. Not to say that the original Flintstones would be substantially better if it were a comic, but this version of the Flintstones knows how to play on the strengths of that medium, and it works really, really well. Chances are you've seen scans of this comic floating around. Mm-hmm. I strongly recommend actually reading the issues. It's very, very good. It is worth buying. I don't normally advocate buying like individual floppy issues of a comic. I usually wait for the trade paperbacks, but the Flintstones is really worth it. It's great stuff.
It's the one disadvantage of not working in a comic shop anymore. I haven't been able to read them.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Comic book podcast, and they were just dumbfounded that the series was as good as it was, and they just said that they based their book of the year based on what their top 5s are each, and it was on each of their top 5s, and it became their book of the year because it was just so interesting. I haven't read it myself, but I am looking so forward to actually finally getting it. I think I'm waiting for the trade for this one. I'm not too sure. Just the premise of it sounds so interesting, and I cannot wait to read it.
You know what? I wonder if in a way, the whole idea behind the comic was that the original Flintstones TV series was an egregious example of a situation comedy with no satire at all. Like I know it's from the 60s, but the modern Stone Age family, that premise is satirical.
Yeah. That's a great point.
I think it would be anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's amazing. Watch those episodes. there's no satire in those scripts. For people our age who grew up on The Simpsons, they're unwatchable in that sense. There's good aspects about them, but in that sense, they're kind of unwatchable.
Yeah, like even when I was growing up with them, I never really wanted to watch the Flintstones. It was only ever I watched it when there was literally nothing else on, and even then I wasn't happy about it. So I don't really have any great nostalgia for it, but I still know who all the characters are because it's what was on at the time. So I'm really glad to see that someone has taken the premise, which should be satirical, as you say, and actually made it so, especially in a modern context.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, before we finish up, I know it's very hard to look forward to 2017, but was there anything you guys were looking forward to, media-wise?
I was really looking forward to Star Trek Discovery. I was still looking forward to it when Brian Fuller kind of went a little bit, but now the thing is he's completely gone from it.
Yeah.
And basically he has his deputy writers in charge of the writing, and Akiva Goldsman of Batman and Robin fame is handling the production.
For me, I'm excited for what's going to be happening in theaters with anime. If everything comes out here that they're saying will, I'm going to have a busy first 2 months, that's for sure. Hopefully this trend will continue and we'll keep getting more and more stuff. I think we're on the way to that happening. I thought so in 2015, but then 2016 was pretty sparse. Hopefully Digimon will come back for the other ones. It seemed popular enough. I know that there's the Sword Art Online movie, which I'm going to see just because it's an anime, not because I'm particularly interested in it. But hopefully that'll come. Sailor Moon, I'm really hoping will come because I really want to see that in theaters. That's been a dream of mine since I first watched Sailor Moon. Like, to see that in the theaters would be amazing. Not anime wise, I can't help but be excited for that Spider-Man movie coming out.
Yeah.
I think he was the shining moment of Civil War. They finally got Spider-Man right, and watching the trailer, it seemed like that tone is going to continue. It does just seem like they took out Miles Morales and put in Peter Parker.
Yeah, pretty much.
Pulling that kid Genki, but
yeah, but he might as well be. It's a little disappointing that they're doing that, but I think like this is a stepping stone to maybe getting Miles Morales at one point.
Do we know who Donald Glover is playing in that movie yet? I don't think we do, right?
No, I don't think so.
He was in the trailer.
A lot of people are speculating that he would be the Prowler or something.
Yeah, I'm just confused why in the trailer you can clearly see Peter Parker wearing Pepper Potts' nightshirt from one of the movies.
Oh, I did not pick up on that.
Huh.
Yeah.
Staying with Tony Stark while he's training or something, maybe, or I don't know.
Yeah. But like largely, I'm always interested in the Marvel movies, but I'm never that excited. And this one has me a little excited, so I'm very intrigued what's going to happen with this one. So I'm looking pretty forward to it.
Yeah, especially compared to like the other Marvel movies that are going to come out, like Thor Ragnarok. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that one sounds pretty promising,
Galaxy
actually.
Volume 2. But it's going to be fun. I'm not really expecting like a hugely. Oh my god, I'm super looking forward to this kind of.
Two movies I'm kind of looking forward to. One is Wonder Woman, just because of the female director.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the other is, surprisingly enough, I can't believe it, but live action Beauty and the Beast.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to feel about that one.
I just think it's fascinating that they're remaking an adaptation with the music intact, and so it'll be beholden to that aesthetic, which is really intriguing.
Yeah, I feel the same way. When I first saw like the teaser trailer and it used the exact same music from the original trailers, I didn't know what to think, and I'm intrigued by it. I'm not necessarily looking forward to it, but I can't help but be curious. Like, I really like Beauty and the Beast. It's probably my top 5 Disney movies. Wondering what they'll do with it. Definitely.
I don't know why I'm still hopeful about this, but I honestly am curious about the Ghost in the Shell movie. Like, as many problems as I have with obviously the whole casting issue with that one, I really want to see an anime-based live-action Hollywood movie work in some way. And not just indirectly like we had with Chronicle or, what is the other one I'm thinking of? There have been a few other ones for sure that have not been, like, that have been inspired. Pacific Rim, that was the other one. Where they've been inspired by anime, but they're not anime adaptations.
I think Speed Racer was good.
Oh, Speed Racer, yeah. Speed Racer is like the only really one that's captured the spirit of the original show and been a good movie in its own right. And I am really curious in the shell because it seems like they've captured a lot of aesthetic elements from the Oshii movie. Maybe not so much the pacing or tone of it, but it looks like the sort of thing that I would be interested to see unfold on a big screen, with lots of high resolution detail available, especially all the tech stuff and the wires and colors and whatnot. And I'm really interested to see especially how the supporting cast works out, because apart from the casting of Scarlett Johansson, the supporting cast at least seems to have a lot of diversity in it. I'm looking forward to, I think it's, Takeshi who is playing Aramaki. So I'm hoping that he gets a substantial role in that sense. And just in general, I want to see sort of how they tackle the story of that first movie and how they adapt it for an American audience.
2017, if you look at the release calendar, it's pretty silly the amount. It's just amazing the amount of remakes, reboots, sequels all through the entire year. But on the other hand, you have these extreme curiosities like the Lego Batman movie and Blade Runner 20 whenever that, okay, I'm not quite jiving with the idea of making these movies, but my intrinsic curiosity is piqued, let's say that.
Mm-hmm. And that's how I feel with Power Rangers too, so.
Yeah.
I am so curious about what that'll be.
Yeah, like I don't know if I expect that movie to be good, but I am interested in it.
Yeah.
I think the thing that they're using Rita Repulsa kind of shows they're trying to return to what makes it so silly and memorable in the first place.
I hope so. Like, a lot of people were complaining at the trailer, like, oh, it's a dark and gritty reboot. Oh no, it's gonna suck. But just the way, like, some of the dialogue is handled and the fact they're not really afraid to use those sort of, like, neon colors in the costumes sort of gives me a hint that maybe they're not gonna go entirely that route. And I'm curious to see exactly what the tone is from the movie itself and not just the trailers.
Mm-hmm. It didn't strike me as being that dark and gritty. I think it's just a little more grimy is the word I'm looking for. I'm so curious about it.
Yeah, keep in mind that for Power Rangers Season 1, they actually took away all the goofier Zero Ranger footage, and they really kind of propped up all the weird and gothic and grimy Toei footage that they had. Mm-hmm. So Power Rangers have always gone kind of dark and serious and self-serious at various times through its run, even something like RPM.
Yeah, RPM is my favorite season of Power Rangers probably.
Yeah, RPM is interesting in that the Western footage they shot is probably more interesting than the Sentai footage that it's adapting.
Definitely.
I was gonna say, as someone who would much rather just go back and watch Zyuranger to deepen my childhood appreciation of Power Rangers rather than just embrace something new to be nostalgic about that. I'm kind of ambivalent toward it, but I have to admit I'm very curious about Bryan Cranston playing Zordon.
Jesse, one thing to keep in mind is that a lot of the Zyuranger footage that was cut is actually just as silly as the Saban produced live action footage. So the serious Zyuranger footage is in Power Rangers, but the silly stuff of that show is equivalent to the silly stuff in Power Rangers.
I'm not trying to suggest that Zyuranger is more serious or darker than Mighty Morphin Power Rangers was.
It's quite equivalent.
Yeah. I'm just saying I just appreciate seeing, like, the original context better. Yeah. As far as what I'm looking forward to in 2017, I think the big thing is probably the new Twin Peaks series. I just actually finished rewatching the series this week, and yeah, it is one of the few shows where I feel that a continuation is absolutely justified, especially with the way things just completely nosedived in the second season, only to recover at an unprecedented high in its final episode and then to just stop. And especially with David Lynch apparently directing every single episode in the new series, which is going to be more than 9 episodes, and I think that may actually be an unprecedented effort for one director doing a television series. I think it's going to be something to really look forward to. I'm excited about that.
I'm just looking over a list of like movies that are coming out in 2017 just to remind myself, and I'm seeing a couple things I just want to like run down real quickly without really going too much into them, just to mention them. First is Baby Driver, which is Edgar Wright's next film. It's been a long time since he's put a film out, since I guess the last one was actually Scott Pilgrim. Next one would have been Ant-Man, but that obviously fell through. So
there was
been,
the World's End was.
Oh yeah, The World's End.
End
Was in between there too. So it's been about 4 years since his last movie. So I'm really looking forward to seeing work. There's also going to be a horror movie that I'm interested in called Get Out, which is directed by Jordan Peele of Key and Peele, and apparently the early reviews on that are really good. It's been delayed till February, which is infuriating. I'm curious about, there's a movie called A Cure for Wellness coming out, which is a Gore Verbinski movie, Caribbean director, Rango director. I like him as a director, so I'm curious to see what he's going to come up with as like just an independent film. And I think the only other thing I'm looking forward to really is, I guess, well, other than the big stuff like Star Wars and Justice League and stuff like that, I guess I'm curious about I think is that the Alien 5 coming out that year, or have they pushed that again? Because I am still curious about what they're going to do with that.
I thought the sequel to Prometheus was coming out, and the Neil Blomkamp Alien has kind of been put on hiatus.
I see 2017 lists something called Alien Covenant. But in general, I'm an Alien fan, so I'm curious to see what the Alien franchise is going to do after Prometheus.
Yeah.
That was a pretty movie.
I'm also hoping that the final Evangelion movie will finally get announced next year.
Yeah.
I'll be happy with an announcement. I'll be happy with an announcement. I'll take it. If they can crank that out before like the world economy collapses or whatever, that'd be great. I'd be happy.
We'll get that about the same time we get Kingdom Hearts 3.
Thanks for tuning in to Zannen Canada. The theme song is by Ultraclystron, which you can purchase as part of his album Packet Flood at ultraclystron.com. You can reach me through Twitter at ZonnenCanada or email zonnencanada@gmail.com. Please subscribe to the show on iTunes or your podcast app of choice. If you could leave a rating or review, that would be really great as well. As always, please recommend the show to anyone you think might be interested. Until next time, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. See you again.